All right, as we go through today, if you have any questions, go ahead and send them in using the question and answer box as part of the Zoom interface there. Again, use the question and answer. Do not use chat. Today, we're talking about Wi-Fi 6E. It's the latest technology still that has hit the Wi-Fi world with general availability starting last summer. So it's something that's new and different and something that people still have a lot of questions on, particularly when it comes to upgrading or deploying new networks. Should we make that jump today to Wi-Fi 6E for our customers or not? So today I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about Wi-Fi 6E, what it is, what makes it different, and I'll also talk about the Wi-Fi 6E products that we currently offer here at Zyxel. So with Wi-Fi 6E, it's basically Wi-Fi 6. The main differences here, we're taking the Wi-Fi 6 technology and we're expanding it into this new 6 gigahertz space that the FCC recently opened up for us. So the benefits of 6 gigahertz versus the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz are there's a lot more bandwidth available in this 6 gigahertz spectrum. Specifically, you can have 7 non-overlapping 160 megahertz channels in this 6 gigahertz space. And basically, there's nothing else using 6 gigahertz at this point, with some very minor exceptions for outdoor usage. So because of that, there's not going to be a lot of interference. There are not, 6 gigahertz Bluetooth. There aren't any other devices around that are using 6 gigahertz that could cause interference. So to give an example here of just how much available bandwidth there is, we've got this chart here. And what it's showing you is basically how much bandwidth is available on each of the different Wi-Fi spectrums. So 2.4 is this frequency over here. Here's your 5 gigahertz. And then here is your 6 gigahertz. As you can see, this new 6 gigahertz spectrum here in the US is bigger than 2.4 and 5 gigahertz combined. So one of the ways that we get faster speeds with Wi-Fi is by increasing the amount of bandwidth that we are using. Um, so you can see originally with Wi-Fi channels, we used 20 megahertz channels. When we made the jump up to 11N or Wi-Fi 4, we started using 40 megahertz channels. And then from there, we jumped up to 80 and now 160 megahertz channels. And also, as a lot of you know from some of my other presentations, a good chunk of this 5 gigahertz is what we call DFS channels. So these are channels that you may not want to use for a number of reasons. One is they have a propensity to disconnect users, at least temporarily. Also, a lot of bring your own device, consumer devices don't support these middle channels. We go into that in a little bit more detail in our general Wi-Fi 101 presentation. So that's just something else to keep in mind is, 5 gigahertz for a lot of you is not as big as it looks right here on this chart, but 6 gigahertz is. So the only way to use 160 megahertz channels was to use this DFS spectrum, and there were only 2 of them available in 5 gigahertz. So that means as soon as you added a third device, it would be overlapping with your existing devices and causing co-channel interference. So with 6 gigahertz, you get another 7 of these 160 megahertz channels to use. So it really goes a long way to solving issues with overlap and interference between different APs in the same area. So that's leads us to what are the benefits? What are the use cases? When is it that I maybe want to go ahead and spend a little extra money to upgrade my network to 6E instead of Wi-Fi 6? So Wi-Fi 6E is really good for high density environments. So that's places where either you've got a lot of users or you've got a lot of access points or both. And also maybe possibly um, some really high bandwidth applications. I don't think there's a lot going on today that really needs it. You can see on the slide, it says things like 8K video streaming or being able to stream VR. But I can tell you, you know, regular 5 gigahertz has enough bandwidth for VR and 8K. I guess maybe in an environment where you've got a lot of that going on on one wireless network, 6 gigahertz may be a benefit for you. So I think the main application is going to be this high density Wi-Fi areas where you've got either a lot of users or a lot of APs in the same space. Um, Schools, I think, are going to be one of the big areas where this is going to be popular. With smart classrooms and all the streaming going on, this will really allow you to bump up coverage and be able to maximize your performance in those locations. Also, things like maybe conference rooms and business centers at hotels and things like that. Another possible application here for 6E is using the 6 GHz radio as backhaul. Um, Especially here in these early days, because one of the challenges we have right now with 6 GHz is that not a lot of devices supported on the client side of things, right? We're still at the point where a surprising number of devices don't support basic Wi-Fi 6, let alone 6 GHz, which is going to require a different radio, a different antenna in order to be able to use it. So this might be a good application here, is setting up wireless links. So you don't have to hardwire all of your access points. You can use the 2.4 and 5 GHz radios to serve your existing client devices, and then use that dedicated 6 GHz channel as the backhaul. Give me just a second here. So I do want to talk about some of the other drawbacks when it comes to 6 GHz. Another one of the big drawbacks here when it comes to 6 GHz, and I'm sorry, I thought I had the slide here. I think I had accidentally hidden it. But with 6 GHz, the 6 GHz space, as you go up in frequency, the range goes down. So that's going to be one of the drawbacks when it comes to 6 GHz, is that the range is a lot less than what you get with 5 GHz, which was already less than what you get with 2.4, especially in indoor environments where you've got a lot of walls or people or equipment around. So that's something to keep in mind, is that if you're intending for your users to all be on 6 GHz or significantly remain on 6 GHz, you are going to need to use more access points to cover the same area that you would need for 2.4 and 5. Another challenge with 6 GHz right now is 6 GHz can legally only be used indoors. It may not be used outdoors. The original plan was that the FCC would release the rules for doing outdoor 6 GHz at the end of last year. That didn't happen due to a number of lawsuits. So for the moment, 6 GHz remains an indoor only solution, not something you can use outdoors. So now we'll go and we'll talk about some of our Wi-Fi 6 offerings, or excuse me, 6E offerings. Now, the first two offerings we have here offer something that we call band flex. So these are access points where we are aiming at keeping the price down. So one of the challenges with 6 GHz, right, is you've got up to 3 radios, and you need a really powerful processor to be able to process the data coming in from those 3 radios, especially 6E and the 5 GHz, because of just how much bandwidth in theory those can push through. So you need really fast CPU and high speed LAN connection. So we've come up with these two models here to try to keep the price down, and we do that by offering what we call band flex. So it's got 2 radios, not 3. One radio is dedicated to 2.4 gigahertz, and the other radio is switchable between 5 gig and 6 gigahertz. So you can use these to be able to deploy as a 2.4/5 gigahertz network today. And then later, when 6 gigahertz is much more common among client devices, you can then switch that over to 6 gigahertz. This also might be a way to add 6 gigahertz coverage in specific areas where you need it, such as meeting rooms and things like that. So you can just simply add these in as an additional AP to provide that 6 gigahertz coverage in those areas. So this is our cheapest model here. It's the NWA 220AX-6E. So it's got a 4x4 5/6 gigahertz radio and a 2x2 2.4 radio here for you. It's got a standard ceiling mount antenna built in there. It supports all of the standard Wi-Fi 6 features on both radios there, including OFDMA, multi-user MIMO in both directions, BSS coloring, et cetera, et cetera. This is a Nebula Flex device, so it can be managed either directly via its built-in web GUI, or you can put it into cloud mode and manage it in the cloud. And like our other APs, it includes all that technology that allows us to really maximize performance in the life of the product, such as no electrolytic capacitors, only solid state capacitors, additional shielding to block out 4G and 5G interference, etc. On the port side of things here, we've got two LAN ports. We've got one, which is your uplink port, which is what you would connect in, and you would use PoE to power it. And then from there, it's also got a pass-through port, so you can run a cable from the AP to another additional device using that same backhaul connection. The step up from this is our WAX 620D-6E. So very similar form factor to the NWA220. The primary difference here is this adds our dual optimized antenna technology. And I will talk about that in another slide for those that aren't familiar with it. And it also upgrades this to a Nebula Flex Pro device. So this can be managed either directly through its web GUI. It can be managed through our free cloud Nebula. It can also be managed with the local controller that's built into most of our security appliances. So it's a tri-mode operation. You choose which way you want to manage it. And if you are using it in the cloud, it does come bundled with 1 year of Nebula Flex Pro, which is our optional license that you can apply to our cloud. It unlocks additional features primarily aimed at MSPs, additional log retention, cloud hosted authentication servers, things like that. And again, the same configuration here as far as the ports go. It's got a DC power outlet. It's got a uplink port. It's 2.5 gigs and then a 1 gig local area network for the uplink. And then this guy here. So if you do want tri-band operation, this is the guy you're looking for, the WAX 640S-6E. For those of you that aren't aware, we had a pretty big price drop back in December on these. So these have gotten extremely affordable. So this is 3 radios. It's a 4x4 6 gigahertz radio, and then a 2x2 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz radio. So all 3 radios operate at the same time. This uses our smart antenna technology to help boost performance, boost range, deal with interference. Won't help much in interference with 6 gigahertz, but will help on the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. This is a Nebula Flex Pro device, so it's got all those 3 modes, just like the other model we were just talking about. And then on the port side of things, same sort of configuration here, although laid out a little bit differently. It's got a 2.5 gig uplink port with PoE support, and then it does have an additional second 1 gig port that you can use to pass through connection to something else. All 3 of our APs use a version of our multi-mounting bracket. So this is a bracket that's been designed to work pretty much anywhere. It's designed to fit on a rectangular outlet box. It's designed to fit on a round junction box. 2 different sizes of junction boxes are supported there. And then if you want to mount it to T-bars, we sell an optional T-bar kit that gives you some little adapters. You snap them on the T-bar, and then this connects directly to those. So real flexible as far as how and where you mount these. So one of the things here that we just wanted to highlight here has to do with the shielding. As you guys know, if you've attended some of my other wireless webinars, we're really big on shielding on our devices. And that includes additional actual shields around the devices, as well as moving the antennas onto their own PCBA and putting a shield between them and the main board. And the idea behind this is to help with those marginal connections, as well as any interference you may get from bleed over from 5 gigahertz devices, as well as interference from 4G and 5G devices that might be nearby. So now I want to talk a little bit about the technology here on the antennas. For those of you that this is your first of the webinars I've done, so just really quickly, let's talk about some of that antenna technology. So the first one here is the dual optimized antennas. So your traditional AP has one antenna pattern. They've been designed to be mounted on the ceiling directly overhead the area to be covered. And the coverage pattern radiates out as a big circle. We call it an umbrella coverage. So this is your traditional access point. Now the problem is out in the real world, sometimes you don't get to mount your APs on the ceiling. Maybe there is no ceiling you can get. Maybe there's a bunch of metal up there. Maybe your customer doesn't want you poking holes in their drop ceiling, whatever it is. So you end up mounting to a wall instead. Now, the problem with that is the antenna pattern's been designed and optimized to be mounted above the area to be covered. So when you mount it on the wall, it becomes less than ideal. A lot of the signal goes up into the ceiling, down into the floor, and you don't get the horizontal coverage you would necessarily want. So our solution to this is that dual optimized antenna, which was on the WAX620D. So it gives you two sets of antennas. One is your traditional ceiling antenna. The other one is a second set of antennas that are optimized for wall placement. And then you can go in with the software and choose and tell it, hey, I want this particular AP to be ceiling mode. This AP is on the wall, so let's switch that over to wall mode. So you get a much more optimized antenna pattern to cover that area for those wall-mounted APs. The other technology we have here is smart antenna. We're pretty much us and Ruckus are the main guys that sell smart antenna technologies. They call theirs Beamflex, and they've got a couple different versions. We've just got our smart antenna. And the main goals behind smart antenna have been to increase capacity, ability to be able to put more devices in the same area, more users on the same AP. So very similar to some of the benefits of 6 gigahertz, but these are complementary technologies, so it's just going to enhance things that much more. Another area here is to reduce interference. So again, right now with 6 gigahertz, you're probably not worried about interference too much. However, keep in mind, you still do have your 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radio in these devices. So this will help the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz clients in the real world can be quite significant. And then the other benefit here, and this is where it really plays into 6 gigahertz, is it helps increase coverage by being able to focus the antenna beams to where the clients are. You get a little bit better coverage than you would without smart antenna technology. So that's an area that's really important, or can be really important on 6 gigahertz, right? Because you've got less range than with the 2.4 and 5. So having smart antenna on there can help boost that 6 gigahertz coverage area to be more comparable to what you're expecting from a non-smart antenna 2.4 or 5 gigahertz AP. This is just showing again, a typical AP has got a fixed antenna pattern. Usually this round one, although if you're doing point-to-point bridges, they may have a directional antenna built in. So with smart antenna, sorry. Sorry about that weird noise coming from my wall. So a smart antenna, instead what you've got is you've got literally hundreds of antenna patterns that can be chosen in basically real time. And we can do this for each client that's on there. It requires no special technology on the client. And unlike beamforming, it works perfectly fine with mobile client devices. So that's it as far as the antenna technology goes. As I've mentioned before, all of these APs we've talked about can be managed with Nebula. So Nebula is our cloud-hosted management platform. If you've used something like Cisco Meraki, it's the same general idea. The main difference between us and most of our competition, including Meraki, is we're free. Nebula is a free service that we offer. There is no limit to the number of devices you can manage or the number of customers that you can manage. And all of the core functionality is available through the free version of Nebula for you. So basically, if you want to manage something in the cloud, there's nothing that needs to be configured on the AP. You simply log into our website, nebula.zyxel.com. And you add the MAC address and serial number of the device you want to manage, or you can use our mobile app. There is a QR code both on the bottom of the AP and on the outside of the box. Scan either one of those, assign them to your customer, assign them to your customer site, and that's all you need to do. When that AP is powered on, it will automatically see that it's being managed in the cloud and automatically convert itself into cloud mode. So you don't need to go in, tell it to go cloud mode. You don't need to point it to any servers. It's all done automatically. And then switching it back is the same way. You simply remove it from the Nebula cloud and it will automatically switch itself back to the standard management mode. So some of the features here in the cloud here would be easy cloud authorization. So we do have in the Nebula cloud, we have a hosted database that you can use to do MAC filtering, 802.1x user authentication, et cetera. That, guys, that ends today's presentation. If you have any questions, again, send them in using that question and answer interface. All of the webinars we do get recorded and we upload them to our YouTube page. So our YouTube page is Zyxel America channel. Since Zyxel is a global company and a lot of these videos are regional, there are a lot of different Zyxel channels. So for anything for North America, Zyxel America channel is where you will find any webinars you may have missed or past webinars you want to catch up on. It's also where we host things like case studies, success stories. We make videos of those. We also have some instructions that get posted on there. And then, of course, you can always find us on LinkedIn as Zyxel US channel. So I'm not seeing any questions. I'll stick around here for just another minute for you. If you do have any questions, go ahead and send those in and I will answer them. But for everybody else, thanks for joining us today. We do webinars every Tuesday and Thursday. As a general rule, Thursday webinars are more sort of high-level overviews like today's, where Tuesday webinars tend to be a little bit more in-depth. If you're looking for really in-depth trainings, look for the ones that Marcus puts on. Marcus is our sales engineer, and he does more of those deep dives and best practices type webinars. So look out for those if that's the type of thing you are interested in.